Okay, good day all. Welcome to Geotourism Festival 2020 on virtual Geotour sections. Right now, you are currently in Geotour Track 6 on the Poso Lake Virtual Geotour. My name is Abang Mansusa Suryanugraha, but you can call me Ega. I'm one of the guides for this tour. And my colleague here, Eko, will also explain about the biology, diversity in this lake. And also, we are accompanied by Ida Bagus Oka, or you can call Oka, who will accompany you during this virtual tour. So this virtual tour organized by Rinjani Lombok UNESCO Global Geopark Management Board in collaboration with Aturin and fully supported by Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economic Republic of Indonesia. Enjoy your virtual trip and we wish you to visit us in persons, discover other places, events, and amazing stories with the implementation of the cleanliness, health, and safety environment protocols in Indonesia. Now, without further ado, we can start our Poso Lake virtual geotour. Okay, so from the information, we know that the attendants or the participants have different backgrounds, not only geologists, but also maybe outside of geologists. So I'll try my best to explain it in a very simple way. Right now, we are in the Kasiguncu airport. So mostly people will come from Jakarta, and then you will transit in Makassar, in Sultan Hasanuddin airport. And then the flight from Sultan Hasanuddin to Poso here, Kasiguncu airport, is about 1 hour and then 30 minutes. And as you can see here, this is the Kasiguncu airport. And we are not going to ride the motorbike, but we will get a car here. And after a long flight, you can take some meals in here. There's a canteen. There are many canteens here. One of the best one is Liverpool. So anyone who is supporting Liverpool might come to here. So this is the Kasiguncu Airport. From Kasiguncu Airport, we'll take a car from here to go to the south to Tentena City, where the Poso Lake is located. The duration from here by car is about 1 hour and 30 minutes. And along the road, you can see or enjoy the scenery where there are many mountains and also the the lakes that next to the Poso city. So you can see here. So the weather itself sometimes is quite hot and windy. So usually you need hat and then enough water before we start our geo tour today. So along the road, I will explain a little about the geology of this area, including some history about the Sulawesi. So why Sulawesi is a very interesting place, not only for geologists, but also for naturalists. Here we can see a picture of Alfred Russel Wallace. He's the one who created the Wallace line. So the Wallace line is mainly separating between the west and also eastern Indonesia. And the interesting place that he visited is Sulawesi Island, or previously called as Celebes. So in this island, we got a mix between the Asia or Eurasia and also Australian animals and also plants in here. So it's always very interesting for naturalists to come here and then do the research. Wallace himself, he said that Celebes or Sulawesi Island is one of the most remarkable, interesting island in the region, or perhaps in the world, because there's so many problems that need to be solved, and not only in terms of their biological diversity, but also in terms of their geological characteristics. Because he also stated that one of the reasons why the plants and also animal is so various and diverse in Sulawesi is possibly controlled by its geological condition. So today we are going to explore more about the geological and also biological diversity in Sulawesi. So a little story about Celebes, or now called as Sulawesi. So the name itself come from Celebesi. It means the iron knife. It's named by the Portuguese sailors. So I think you can see in here, there's an old map, which is not really representative like what the island today. And it's made by the Portuguese sailors for the first time. And then there are also people who uh, uh, published that the Sulawesi or Sulawesi names or Sulawesi names come from the island of Iron, or Punta de Celebres in Portuguese, or Cape of Infamous. So that's a short story about the Celebes names that mean the iron knife. As we know, there are many uh, geological resources, including the mining resources in this island. So that might be one of the reasons why Sulawesi is rich in iron. And before that, maybe some of you remember there was a big earthquake that happened in Palu. And in this area, particularly in Lake Poso, the last a big earthquake that is recorded is in the Meko in the Meko village. It's in 2019, and that's one of the reasons why Institute Mosintowo initialized to have a Poso expedition. So me and Echo was of the part of the team for the expedition Poso. So we got so many people who have different backgrounds to do more study about the not only the geology, biology, but also other matters in this area. So you can see it's Sulawesi it's is unbelievable. So I think I heard the story before that before the big earthquake in Palu itself, that people usually get used with the low magnitudes of the earthquakes. But after the earthquakes that happened in Palu, people after that more aware about the earthquake in Sulawesi. And this is the record of the earthquake since 1970. As you can see that there are many earthquakes on Sulawesi, and also not also on the island, but also on the Gulf, and also in the Lake Poso itself. And as we know, Lake Poso is different with the most famous lake in Toba Lake, for example, because Toba Lake is the volcanic origin lake, while Lake Poso is the tectonic origin lake, where I'm going to explain it more later. And then you can see the depth of the epicenter itself is really vary. So from shallow into a very deep depth, and it also represents the complexity of the geology itself, because Sulawesi has so many suture, or they are cut by so many faults. This is the latest faults map that is published by Mr. Daryono. And you can see here there are so many faults zone and also fault segmentation that called that cut the Sulawesi. Even in here in Poso Basin, in the western part is bounded by the West Poso Fault, while the eastern part is cut by the Poso Fault. So you can imagine how actively or tectonic actively this area is. And this is the short story about how this island formed. I told you before that Sulawesi itself formed as a result of collisions of many fragments or blocks or continental blocks. And as we can see here, there are at least two parts of Sulawesi, western part and eastern part. And Sulawesi itself contains so many fragments that actually come from Australian origin. So about 150 million years ago, Sulawesi has not been formed. And then later, the first West Sulawesi formed about late Cretaceous or 19 million years ago, but it's only west part of the Sulawesi. While the eastern part of Sulawesi is started to form about 20 million years ago, where this red color represent the continent that come from Australia. So if you thinking about how the island or the mountain form at the moment is a result of the collision that happened between these blocks or continental fragments. And then this is the condition right now. So for those of you who's not familiar with the term of the continental fragment and oceanic fragment, or continental crust and oceanic crust that I explained before. So simply it's the outer part of the earth. So basically, if you're thinking about the X, so the outer part of the earth, which is called crust, where we stay or live at the moment, is like an eggshell. So that's what we call crust. So the outer part, the hard, rigid outer part of the earth where we live at the moment. And the crust itself can be differentiated between continental crust, which is a continent that easily we can say that it's above the sea level, or although the rock compositions are also different. So, and the rocks or the crust that submerged under the sea is called the oceanic crust. So we are geologists, learn about this, and we can identify this by its rocks composition. So the oceanic crust, it will easily, or we can say that it's like an oceanic floor. So it's a floor of the ocean. So they have a different rocks, series of rocks that are called ophiolites. And this one on this side is the continental crust. So it's different rocks that form the part of the continent. So interestingly, in Sulawesi, it's not like other islands. So I think in Indonesia itself, there are only few islands that have a complete rocks from oceanic and also continental crust. And Sulawesi is one of them. And particularly in Poso area here, we can see both evidence of this oceanic and also continental crust. So we are going to start our journey in Sulewana, and then after that we are going to Kuku and also Libanu area to see the geomorphological features of the Poso Basin or Poso Valley itself. Okay, bear with me. So now we are going to Sulewana. So here we're going to see, this is the Poso Lake, and this is the Poso City. So from Poso to Tentena, the city closest to Danau Poso, it's about 1.5 hours. And then after that, we're going to see the rocks, or see the outcrops, or see the location where we can see the evidence of the oceanic crust that I told you before. So this is the locations, and this is the dam that recently built along the Poso River. And this area, we can see there are evidence of rocks that represent the oceanic crust. So if we can see here, we see at the outcrops of the location point where we can see the series of the rocks. So the series of the rock itself as a rocks that make the oceanic crust consist of basalt. So these black magmatic rocks with the shape look like a rounded or like a pillow is part of the oceanic crust. And then we got chert usually on top of the series, which represent the sediments that were deposited on the sea. And then we also got gabbro, and then we got ultramafic rocks that usually have a green color here. So these rocks represent the oceanic part that previously located in the oceanic flow, but now in Sulawesi because of the collision of a different fragment, and then they got uplifted and now can be seen on land. Okay, now from Sulawana, we are going to move to other area where we can see evidence of the collisions from the continental crust. So from here, we are going to go to Kuku here. So this location is located in the road cut from Kuku to Panjoka. And there are two types of significant rocks that we can see. The first one, this one is called the green schist. So it's part of the metamorphic rock. So what is metamorphic rocks? Metamorphic rock is the rocks that were formed because of the increasing temperature and or the pressure. And you can see here, this is what it called as a green schist, because you can see the color itself has a green color. And then you can see clearly from here, it has a green color. And there are also another important rocks in here, which called as a blue schist. And the color has a blue reflections. And this is the outcrops of the blue schist. And you can see here the blue color of the rocks. And these two rocks are really important because they are evidence of the subductions that happened before. So as I mentioned before, it's like maybe most of you know about the subduction zone, or usually called a megathrust in southern of Java. So there was a megathrust or a subduction before the collision happened in Sulawesi. And these rocks as a evidence of the event that happened in Sulawesi. So we can say that previously there was a megathrust or there was a subduction that happened in Sulawesi and formed Sulawesi at the moment. Now, these rocks that previously in the very deep, in the deep earth, where, for example, the blue schist here, it need to be in the condition of high pressure and low temperature, and now they have been exhumed and then uplifted in the Pompangil mountains. So this Kuku area is just in the peripheral area of what is called of the Pompangil mountain. So if we see from zoom out here, where the Poso Lake is bounded by two mountainous area here. This one here on the west is the Tokorondo Mountains, while this is in the east is the Pompangil Mountains. So here's some of the pictures what I explained it before. So this is the diagram that's showing the position of the green schist and the blue schist. So this is the megathrust which I explained before, or it's called as a subduction, where when it's going down, it will be increasing heat and pressure, and where the heat and pressure increasing, so these metamorphic rocks can be formed. So it's like, it's like you make a cake where you put in the oven, and then it will get cooked when the temperature is rising. So this is the schematic scenario about the condition, how these rocks can form. And after that, if you can see here, we are going to move to another area where we can see the so the next one. So we are going to see the location is in Lebanu. So I'm going to bring you to fly out here. So from here, you can see clearly that Poso is like a valley between two mountains. This is the Tokorondo and this is the Pompangio. And we try to see from here where we can see this is the Poso city. And here we can see the Gorontalo Bay or Gorontalo Gulf. And now we are in Lebanu, where we can see the Poso Valley here. So this is the picture that we took during the Poso expeditions. Now we are looking at the Poso Valley, and you can see that there is a Poso River that looks like a snake here. We call this as a meandering river. Usually meandering river represent the maturity of the area, and also can be represent the rocks or the finer rocks in the area. And you can see this is the very flat down into the valley, and then to the west we can see this is part of the Tokorondo mountain. And interestingly here, the further away we can see there's a shape like a V shape here. And you can see the V shape here. We usually call this as a wind gap. So the story behind this is evidence that this mountain previously was lower, but now it's getting higher. And then this V shape was part of the river that cut this mountain before. So like the mountain probably like lower before, where the river now was flowing on top of it. But now this fee is getting higher, so probably there is no river flowing at the moment, because there is an uplifting happen in Sulawesi. And from the research in Sulawesi itself, there was a rapid uplift of the land and also rapid subsidence of the sea across Sulawesi. So the speed or the it's about like 1.6 to 2 millimeters per year. So you can see that the tectonically active area can be represented by the rapid uplift and also rapid subsidence in the area. And when we get up in here from the lower part to the top of the hill, along the way we can see there are so many fossils. So fossil is like living or not living. It's not living anymore. So the fossil itself, as you can see here, was living in the, let's say, in the shallow water. So what you can see here, maybe some of you are commonly do the snorkeling and you might be familiar with this. So this is a coral, or we geologists just name it as the head coral because the shape is like the human brain. So we call this the head coral. So this is fossils that I found on the top of the hill. And the lower part of the hill, I can see there's shells. So it's a fossil cells. So as a geologist, we usually do the deduction. So we can say that these mountains was a sea before, or a shallow sea before they get uplifted and now become a hills or become a land in Sulawesi. So this evidence also help geologists to understand about the evolutions of the area or the how the island form. So we can see, or we can say, or we can interpret that the Poso basin or Poso Valley previously was a sea before. And after that, usually geologists will make an interpretations like what I'm going to show you next. So the fossils of the head corals and also the shells that I saw you before has been dated during my study. So it's back about like 5 million years ago. And interestingly, I also got another fossils, which is microfossils. So the size itself is really small. So it's a nanoparticle size of the fossils. And from the fossil itself, we can know the age. So this fossil age is about 8 million years ago. And also we can also know the conditions or the environment when the fossils of living, or when they still as an like a living organism. So in here, this fossil is called the Phenolithus abies. So it's hard to remember. So basically, these fossils are representing the higher salinity conditions in the sea. So I can interpret, or I can now see the evidence that previously the Poso basins was a deep sea before. And interestingly, because it has a significant higher salinity, we can also say that this Poso basin previously was a semi-enclosed or isolated sea. It's like, at the moment, it's like maybe it's like a Red Sea, and it's not happen in every part of the world. So I know that this representing the higher salinity because this fossil also found in another part of the world. So I'll show you here in the Mediterranean Sea. So what happened in the Mediterranean Sea? There was a Mycenaean crisis. So it's basically there was an isolated sea in this area where it is separated from the open sea, and that's what happened in Poso Basin before about 8 million years ago. So it's really interesting place. I mean, for me as a geologist, because there is so many interesting uh, uh, like what mystery that need to be found in Sulawesi itself. So because they got separated from the open seas, basically evaporation is increasing in the isolated basin or isolated sea. So that why it make the condition of the water become more saline. And then after that, we are going to go to Tentena itself. We are going to getting close to the Poso Lake. So I'm going to take you to the Poso Lakes, and after that, uh, Echo will explain a little bit about the biological diversity in this lake. So hang on a minute. All right. So now we can see from the up here. So now we are looking at the Poso. So to the south is the Poso Lake, where it's surrounded by the Hau Mountain. And in front of us is the Poso River. So there are two bridges which Echo will explain later. And this, you can see the landscape here. It's a really interesting landscape. So we got a flat area in the Poso Valley, and then it's surrounded by the high mountain. Okay, Echo, maybe you can explain a little bit more about the biological diversity in this lake. Please, Echo.
Okay, sorry, I will explain it in bahasa, and Bang Ega will translate in English. Okay, Bang Ega.
Okay.
Okay, kembali di gambar tadi Bang Ega di sungainya.
Okay. This will do.
Ya,
Yeah.
ini adalah gambar wayang masapi atau pagar sidat. Jadi pagar sidat ini adalah perangkap tradisional masyarakat setempat untuk menangkap sidat itu, Anguilla marmorata. Terus ini adalah outlet danau menuju laut, dan ini juga adalah jalur migrasi sidat Anguilla marmorata yang ada di Danau Poso. Jadi Anguilla marmorata ini bermigrasi sejauh kurang lebih 70 km dan akhirnya dia berwaya atau bereproduksi itu di laut, di kedalaman di bawah 5.000 meter permukaan laut. Jadi begitu Bang Eka.
Okay, so for those of you who's not familiar with Sidat, maybe Eko will explain more about Sidat. So Sidat is one of the endemic fish in Sulawesi. And if you see here, there's like, it's not, it's basically, it's not like, it's not a boat. So it's a place to catch that fish, that Sidat fish, where it's a traditional way to catch the fish itself. Maybe maybe you can explain more about what the Sidat's characteristic, why it's become really important in Sulawesi, Eko.
Oke, sidat sebenarnya sidat yang ada di sini Anguilla marmorata itu bukan endemik Danau Poso, hanya saja kelimpahannya di Danau Poso melebihi di tempat lain. Jadi diberi nama Anguilla marmorata karena kulitnya berwarna seperti marmer. Jadi sidat ini telah diteliti oleh banyak profesor termasuk Aoyama dari Jepang, itu meneliti tentang populasi sidat, terus jalur migrasi dan sebagainya. Jadi sidat ini menjadi mahal karena memang dia termasuk komoditi ekspor. Jadi kadar proteinnya tinggi dan memang dagingnya cukup enak. Kalau di Danau Poso, di Poso sendiri, sidat yang hidup itu biasanya harganya itu 90.000 sampai 150.000 per kilo.
I see. So it's Sidat has become the important commodity because people usually export this, and then it's really delicious. Yeah. So I think Sidat fish is like a kind of like a, I don't know, it's like unagi or eel for me. And interestingly, Sidat only, you know, they got bred only on this Poso Lake, right? And then after that, they will going back to the sea again. So Poso itself is become like their second home. So it's an important second home of the fish. I see. I see. Okay. Okay, Ko. Do you want to move, or you're going to explain more about something here in this river? Mau lanjut? Okay. Next we are going to see Kompondongi here. Maybe Eko will explain more about what we can learn from Kompondongi.
Ya, Kompondongi adalah zona transisi antara perairan, sungai, dan daratan atau aquatic terrestrial transition zone. Jadi Kompondongi ini hanya terisi dan terendam air itu pada saat musim hujan. Jadi ketika fluktuasi muka air itu naik, maka Kompondongi ini menjadi terendam. Sebaliknya ketika musim kemarau, Kompondongi ini akan terpisah dengan sungai tadi. Jadi Kompondongi menjadi tempat pemijahan ikan pada saat air itu naik. Karena pada saat air itu turun, mikroorganisme yang ada di Kompondongi ini bereaksi dan menyebabkan pada saat hujan, Kompondongi ini menjadi sumber makanan bagi ikan-ikan endemik yang ada di sekitaran Danau Poso.
So this area is kind of I don't know, it's like an intertidal pond or lake or something where there are so many microorganisms that living here and then creating the speciation or endemisms in this area, I suppose. Can we know what are the organisms or important organisms that living in here, Eko?
Di sini ada beberapa jenis ikan endemik, terutama dari Orizias. Nanti mungkin Bang Ega akan jelaskan nanti bahwa menurut jurnal Pak Daniel ya, yang Bang Ega akan jelaskan soal dari famili Adrianetidae itu. Jadi itu salah satu ikan endemik di Danau Poso. Itu cukup banyak di sini, di daerah ini, di Kompodomi. Selain itu ada beberapa jenis siput itu dari genus Telomelania, ada Telomelania culi, Telomelania porcelanica juga ada di wilayah Kompodomi. Jadi Kompodomi ini juga sebenarnya adalah habitat dari biota perairan endemik yang ada di Danau Poso.
Interesting. So this area here, this let's say part of the lake here is it's a really important environment for the organisms that are living in Poso. Later, Eko will also show us about the what the fish that he mentioned about and also the snails that he mentioned later. Right. So can we move to next area, Eko? Lanjut kita. So now we are in the Watu Pangasa. What we can hear from Eko in Watu Pangasa?
Watu Pangasa ini namanya Watu Pangasa Angga, atau dalam bahasa Indonesia itu artinya tempat makhluk halus mengasah pedangnya. Jadi ada beberapa tanda seperti bekas asahan pedang di batu itu. Itu makanya dia dinamakan Watu Pangasa Angga menurut suku Pamona. Nah, di sekitar Watu Pangasa Angga ini kami menemukan beberapa spesies endemik juga, itu dari jenis udang-udangan. Jadi ada Caridina cerulea atau kalau dikenal biasa itu blue leg posus shrimp. Jadi dia berwarna biru pada caput dan ekornya dan juga tangannya. Jadi itu termasuk udang hias juga yang sering diekspor ke di luar. Jadi tempat ini adalah ujung dari Danau Poso itu sendiri yang berbatasan langsung dengan outletnya. Jadi ini batasnya, Bang.
Oke, ini di batas selatan atau batas utara nih?
Utara,
batas utara ya. Oke. So this is the northern tip of the lake, and this is why it's called Watu Pangasa. So local people believe that the story behind this because there is an old spirits that use these rocks as a place to sharpening the walls. But in a geological interpretation, I think the rock itself is cut by the faults. So that's why the faults also responsible to make this lake. And interestingly, this is the place where we can find one of the endemic shrimp, right? Eko said that it's a blue shrimp. It's really beautiful shrimp, which we can see after this. So okay, now we are going to see the fish and also the snails and also the shrimps in the area. So I'm going to show you here. Eko you might explain more about the endemic fish species here.
Oke, makasih Bang Ega. Di sini ada beberapa gambar, beberapa foto tentang ikan endemik di Danau Poso. Jadi ini ada nomor Hampus celebensis. Nomor Hampus celebensis adalah satu-satunya dari famili Xenarchotheridae yang ada di Danau Poso. Sebenarnya bukan di Danau Poso, tapi di inlet-inlet sungai yang menuju Danau Poso. Ada beberapa gambar dari famili Adrianetidae, dari genus Orizias, dan genus Adrianitis. Jadi di sini
So fail. Okay, please bear with us because there might be a connection loss with Echo. All right, so while we are waiting for Echo, maybe you can see there are so many fish. I don't know the details of this fish, but it's obvious that I think this fish mainly can only be found in the Poso Lake. And this is the Anguilla marmorata, where Echo said as a sidat. So local people call it sidat. So that's why I told you it's like unagi or like a eel here. Okay, now we got Echo back. Echo, you can continue your explanation now.
ikan gobi di Danau Poso itu ada dua jenis, Mugilogobius saracinorum dan Mugilogobius amadi. Sementara Mugilogobius amadi ini juga dilaporkan terakhir ditemukan itu pada tahun 1985 di Bulmai. Menurut penuturan warga lokal, Mugilogobius amadi ini banyak yang mati itu ketika Gunung Colo meletus pada tahun 1983 kalau nggak salah. Terus abu vulkaniknya itu mengarah ke Danau Poso dan akhirnya menyebabkan banyak ikan jenis ini Mugilogobius amadi yang terdampar di tepi-tepi danau. Tapi hipotesis itu terbantahkan katanya karena menurut citra satelit itu angin dari dan abu vulkanik Gunung Colo itu tidak ke Danau Poso gitu Bang.
I see. Jadi Mugilogobius amadi ini udah punah ya, extinct.
Iya, extinct.
Okay, so this fish Mugilogobius amadi is now extinct, and people believe previously it was because of the volcanic eruption that happened in Cholo. So Cholo now is located in Una. So there's like a small volcanic island in the center of the Gorontalo Bay. So that's what local people as Cholo. But recent study indicate that these volcanic eruptions is not the main cause why this fish got extinct. So I don't know, but for me there might be because this area is like a really tectonically active area, and there might be a and it says that the volcanic ash is not mainly transported to the Poso Lake, but I don't know if the big volcanic eruption happen. I think the environment condition will be changed drastically, especially around the area. So there's still possibilities that this volcanic eruption might also one of the causes for the extinction of this fish, right? Okay, Ko, do you want to explain more or going move to the next slide?
Karena kami sudah memberikan ini adalah udang-udang endemik Danau Poso, freshwater shrimp endemik Danau Poso. Ini ada beberapa gambar pencirinya itu dari morfologi. Kemudian di Danau Poso itu ada 6 jenis yang endemik. Yang satunya itu saya lupa, tapi ini adalah 5 di antara yang endemik Danau Poso. Jadi udang-udang ini juga sering diekspor ke luar sebagai udang hias. Jadi udang Danau Poso ini juga sebagai karakteristik atau penciri bahwa kualitas air itu masih baik, karena udang-udang jenis ini sangat mudah mati dan dia hanya dapat hidup di air yang jernih.
Ini dia masih termasuk banyak ditemukan atau udah ada yang termasuk langka nih, Eko?
Yang langka dari ini yang biru tadi Bang Ega, yang ini Caridina zeroleai.
Oh, I see.
Itu waktu ekspedisi Poso tahun kemarin kita masih dapat dengan Evan di Watu Pangasa Angga tadi. Tapi sesudah itu sampai saat ini saya mencoba untuk mengambil sampel di situ, saya tidak temukan lagi udang ini. Saya tidak tahu apa sebabnya, mungkin dia bermigrasi atau bagaimana, cuman tidak pernah lagi saya temukan di lokasi itu sejak tahun
I
lalu.
see. Okay, so these are streams that can only be found in Poso Lake, and this is the most important one where Echo explained before. This is the blue stream, and it's now it's getting rare because these streams need to get like a good condition to live. So if there's a pollutions, there might be let's say it might affect the streams and also other organisms who living in Poso Lake. Okay, next, Eko.
Ya, ini ada beberapa jenis seafood yang ada di endemik Danau Poso. Kemarin saya sempat menginventarisasi jenis-jenis seafood ini. Saya menemukan 36 jenis seafood yang ada di endemik Danau Poso, itu dari berbagai genus, itu Telomelania, terus ada dari Sulawesi Brobia genusnya, terus ada dari genus Selitaia, ada juga yang dari genus Keindahan. Jadi genusnya namanya Keindahan. Jadi ada sekitar 36 jenis seafood yang ada di yang endemik Danau Poso.
So these are the shells of the like a freshwater mollusk or freshwater snails in Poso Lake. So all of them are endemic, and they can only be found in Poso. So we can see that even in the small area in Poso Lake itself, we can see how big the diversity of the organisms. So this can be said that Poso, it's kind of like the heaven or the heart of the organism to live here in Sulawesi, right? What we got here, Eko, apa yang kita lihat nih?
Di Danau Poso itu juga ada kepiting endemik, tapi ada dua, yang dari genus Paratelphusa dan Sundatelphusa. Tapi selama ekspedisi Poso saya tidak menemukan yang Sundatelphusa, hanya dapat yang Paratelphusa ini di Taman Wisata Alam Bancea, Bang Ida.
Ini di sungai ya dapatnya ya?
Danau, Bang Ida.
Oh, danau. Okay. Yeah. So it's one of the endemic crab in Poso Lake, and it's really small as you can see here. Okay. Ya. Yeah.
Ini tadi yang di Kompodongi, Bang Ida. Jadi
Oke, ini tadi yang kita udah lihat ya. Kompodongi. Yeah. So it's an intertidal area where the endemic fish and also snails living here. So it's the important aquatic terrestrial transition zone, Kompodongi, which we have seen before. Okay. Ini yang tadi ya, Watu Pangasa. So where we see the blue shrimp, we can see the blue shrimp. Okay. This is Bancea Nature Tourism Park. Oh, this is where we can find the small crab, yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting. And you can see that the water, ini airnya ini masih ini ya, the water is still clear. Airnya masih bersih ya kok?
Bersih sekali, jernih sekali, Bang Ida.
Okay, and that's why the animals or the organisms can still live happily in here. Okay, ini di mana nih kok?
Ini di sungai di Desa Boe, Bang Ega. Jadi di sungai ini kelimpahan Mugilogobius saracinorum, gobi yang masih ada di Danau Poso itu cukup tinggi, Bang Ega. Jadi kemarin saya sama Evan itu dapat banyak di sini.
Oke.
Dan di sungai ini yang endemik di sana itu hanya satu jenis ini yang saya temukan.
Keterdapatannya masih banyak kok atau gampang
Banyak
nyarinya?
sekali Bang Ega. Jadi
I
kelimpahan
see.
Mugilogobus saracinorum di Sungai Boy ini hanya terjadi saat musim hujan dan fluktuasi air danau itu naik. Jadi pas kemarau kemarin saya sempat ke lokasi, sungainya ada airnya tapi ikan gobinya nggak ada Bang Ega.
Oh, I see. So we can find so many this goby fish in Boe River, especially during the rainy and then during the high tide of the Poso Lake, right? Okay. Ini di mana nih kok? Koro Tokilo?
Ini Korong Tokilo di daerah ujung Sungai Tokilo yang akan danau. Jadi kami menemukan Cardinal Sarsinolom ini di danaunya Bang Ega, bukan di zona transisi tadi. Kalau di zona transisi itu justru banyak dilepas ikan-ikan yang bernilai ekonomi seperti ikan mas, ikan nila, ikan gabus. Jadi di zona transisi itu tempat masyarakat lokal mosango atau menangkap ikan dengan alat tradisional yang terbuat dari bambu yang disebut sango. Jadi sama seperti di Kompodongi tadi, jadi zona ini hanya terisi air di saat musim hujan.
Oke, jadi ini area aquatic terrestrial zone lainnya ya?
Iya.
Oke, jadi ini kita dapatkan where we can get the small red shrimp here in the Poso part, and this also where local people catching fish what they sell. Tadi apa namanya kok? Tradisi menangkap
Sango,
ikan?
Alatnya sango, tradisinya
Oh,
mosango.
mosango.
Oh,
So the local people here use a specific item to catch the fish called like a I don't know, it's like a small like a long bucket, what they called sango, and then the tradition name itself is mosango. So it's a traditional way to catch the fish in the area. Okay. Sip. Ini tadi ini ya kok, ini beberapa jenis ikan apa? Adrianitidae itu ya. Jadi ini kita masukkan di sini karena ini berbagai macam jenis ikan Adrianitidae ini keterdapatannya itu dia berkelompok, ya enggak? Jadi kalau ini dari publikasi Mokodongan dan Yamahira di Sulawesi bahwa Adrianitidae ini dia merupakan jenis ikan, ada yang kelompoknya itu jenis ikan sungai, ada juga yang berkembang jadi ikan yang di danau, dan dia pengelompokannya ini menarik gitu. Jadi dia nggak sama semua jenis kelompoknya di seluruh Sulawesi, tapi jenisnya itu beda-beda di berbagai tempat gitu. Dan menariknya lagi, ini dari hasil penelitian saya tentang paleogeografi. Jadi ini tentang bagaimana perkembangan daratan dan juga laut di Sulawesi. Ini kita lihat itu agak ada kemiripan gitu. Jadi ini memang benar seperti yang dikatakan Welles bahwa ada kontrol geologi di sini, ada kontrol perkembangan daratan dan lautan di Sulawesi yang mengontrol perkembangan spesies, keanekaragaman spesies di Sulawesi. Ini kalau kita lihat ini pengelompokannya ini mirip posisinya ini seperti ini ya, keadaan pada saat 5 hingga 4 juta tahun yang lalu gitu. Dan awalnya ini juga berkembang, kalau kita lihat di bagian bawah ini berdasarkan hasil penelitian ini dari rekonstruksi DNA, bahwa ikan ini pertama kali itu berasal dari satu jenis ikan yang muncul pada tahun 20 juta tahun yang lalu gitu. Dan ini dia menariknya ini sama gitu dengan perkembangan Sulawesi pada saat 20 juta tahun yang lalu, karena hasil tabrakan Sulawesi itu baru terbentuk daratan hanya di bagian West Sulawesi gitu. Baru selanjutnya berkembang menjadi beberapa pulau terpisah hingga menyambung seperti Sulawesi yang sekarang gitu. Jadi kemungkinan kontrol spesiasi ataupun kontrol keanekaragaman spesies ini dipengaruhi juga oleh kondisi paleogeografi yang juga dikontrol oleh kondisi geologi. So we can see that there are so many groups of the fish or adrenatates fish here. It's a fresh water and also lake fish. And from this research from Mokodongan and Yamahira, it is said that this fish firstly lived in Sulawesi about 20 million years ago. And as we can see, that the first landform in Sulawesi is about 20 million years ago. And it's located in the west and also part of the East Sulawesi itself. And if you can see the groups of the different fish or different groups of aranitates here, it's also kind of representing the conditions or paleogeography of the Sulawesi. So yeah, so this is the results of my PhD results, and we can see that it also represents the islands that was previously formed in Sulawesi. So this can also be the reasons why there are a different group of species that only let's say diverse in the specific area, because in that time maybe you can see here that the diversification happened about maybe close to 1 million years ago, or like between within 0 or 5 million years ago. And you can see that condition of the 5 million years ago is kind of representing what the conditions or what the groups of the aranitids fish in here. So we can see that or we can say that what Wallace states about, like, you know, in the 18th centuries now have been proven by the recent studies here, where the diversifications of the plants and also the animals is also controlled by the geological evolutions of the area. Okay, and now we are going back to geology, and now I'm going to bring you to Petirodongi. So here we are going to zoom out. So previously, this is the area that Eko mentioned before. So it's in the northern part of the Poso Lake, and this is the Poso River that will take the water, goes out into the Gorontalo Bay. So this is what we have explained, or Eko explained about the Cholo. So now it's called as the Una volcanic island. So there's a volcanic island in the middle of Gorontalo Bay in here. That might be the reasons why one of the goby fish has extinct now. And then now we are going back to Petirodongi. So this is Petirodongi, still in the Tentena city here. So there's a big outcrop here where we are going to see more clearly in here. So this is the outcrops. So you can see this brown greenish rocks next to the road here. So in this location, we will see the evidence where the Poso depressions or Poso Valley started to become the land, because previously I mentioned that this Poso Valley was a sea before, and then because of the geological event that happened, there is an uplift where the sea now become uplifted to become a land. And if we see in the detail here, so I made the interpretation here. So you can see that there are two parts. There's a black, like, you know, dark color on the top, and then more brown greenish color on the bottom. And there's, you can see there are layers that looks like cut by faults. So maybe you're familiar with the faults. It's like a break in the rocks, or like a fracture in the rocks, and then it's cut by the faults in here. And this we can see that maybe from a long time ago, we can say that Sulawesi is already active area where there might be many earthquakes that happen, and which make these faults in here. And interestingly, if we see more details, these two layers has a different compositions, or we can say that as a different rock composition. So the lower part in this area, it's mainly consists of ultramafic rocks. So ultramafic rock is one of the rocks that made the oceanic crust, let's say. So during this position, during these depositions, we can say that these oceanic rocks are exposed because of the collisions that happen in Sulawesi. And then the upper part, we can see it has a different composition. It's now, previously we can see that this is the dark colored or greenish colored rocks that part of the oceanic crust. And then now on the upper part, we got more metamorphic rocks. So as I mentioned before, or what I explained before, in the Kuku area, we got metamorphic rocks because of the increasing temperature and also increasing heat because of the subduction happen in Sulawesi. And this is the evidence of it. So this indicate that the previously that was underneath the earth, or now has become uplifted and exhumed, and now getting you know uh, eroded, and then now deposited in this area. So as a geologist, we like to do the interpretation and do the deductions. So this is the study that I did in this area. So sorry, I make a reconstruction. So what causing these rocks get uplifted is because of the uplift of the Pompangil Mountains. So as you can see, or you can remember, on the west side we got Takorando, and then the eastern side we got the Pompangil Mountain. So to make it simple, basically there's the intrusion of magma that make these mountains become more higher. And because this mountain become more higher, there's also uplifted the surrounding area, including the Poso Valley or Poso depressions here. So we can see that during this time, from the 5 million to maybe about 2 or 1 millions, now Sulawesi or Poso depressions getting more and more uplifted to become, from previously sea, now started to become a land. So that's the conditions that make the Poso Valley or the Poso depressions. And after that, we are going to move to Salwopa. So for those of you who has like tired, maybe we're thinking that we are in the car, go out and in, and then after that, we're going to see one of the best waterfalls in the area here. So we are going to go to Salwopa waterfall here. So, okay. So this is the Salwopa waterfall. This is one of the highest waterfall in the area. Maybe it's about 20-meter high. And there are about 12 steps in this waterfall. So the formation waterfall is probably related to the faults, the West Poso faults that cut the mountain. And interestingly, you can see there are slightly mounded features here. So this slightly mounded feature is called as the tufa. So it's a precipitations of the freshwater carbonates that, it's like covered the rocks underneath, and you can see, or you can have take a shovel or bath in here. So, and it's a green area, and it's interesting area because they also make steps to get up into the highest part of the lake itself. And this is the locations. If we see from here, so it's probably related to the West Poso Fault that I mentioned before. So this is the high waterfalls in here, and it's not only interesting in terms of geology. I think the biology itself is also interesting, right, Eko? So maybe Eko will explain more about the fish that we can find in this Salwopa waterfall.
Jadi di sini ada satu jenis ikan endemik juga, itu di sungai-sungai lain, inlet Danau Poso itu kita temukan nomor hampus celebensis, tapi tidak sebanyak di air terjun Salopa ini. Di sungai air terjun Salopa ini kami menemukan nomor hampus celebensis itu dalam jumlah yang sangat banyak. Mungkin karena kualitas air di sini itu memang masih sangat-sangat bagus ya, karena kalau sungai-sungai lain yang inlet Danau Poso selain sungai Salopa ini, sungai ini itu biasanya sudah masuk terkontaminasi oleh penggunaan mungkin pupuk kimia atau pestisida dari kemungkinan kebun atau persawahan warga. Kalau ini memang hutannya masih bagus dan di sekitar ini tidak ada kebun, Bang Ida.
I see. So Eko said that this one of the endemic fish species, the Nomorhampus celebensis, can be found easily in this river. So one of the reasons might be related to the conditions of the water itself. Eko said that this fish species hardly found in the Poso Lake itself or on the other river inlet, because there might be some pollution that already happened. So we can only found this specific or can find easily this fish in this Salwopa waterfall river only, right, Eko?
Okay.
Okay, now we are going to take a boat. We are going to get into Danau Poso to see the Padang Marari. So before that, I'm going to show you. So the Padang Marari is like the small hills that are located in the western sides of the Poso Lake. So you can see the Poso Lake. It's an elongated north-south lake. So we can come from here, from Tentena, or we can also come from this area to get into the Padang Marari. Previously, we went from here to Padang Marari by boat, get along to see if there's any false evidence in this area. So you can see the geomorphology itself. There's some elongations along the lake that we suspect is part of the fall. So this is the location of the Padang Marari. So if we are taking both here, we can see it has a unique characteristic, because in this Padang Marari, it's like, it's like kind of a padang or savanna, where on the previous part we can get so many trees, while in this area we cannot see any trees. So it's really interesting why this can be happen. One of the control might be the rock composition. So in that time, I think I don't have a time to check this one, but I did check the rocks in this area. It's mainly consists of the metamorphic rocks. And if we move further along to the north, we can see there's evidence of the fault scarps. So these fault scarps might be related to the formations of the Poso Lake itself. And later from the Google Earth, you can see also triangular faces that represents the fault scarps. And here the rocks underneath, you can see it consists of the metamorphic rocks. And let me show you some geological interpretation here. So this is the interpretations that the elongation regions as the waterfalls, and the characteristic we can see there are triangular facets along the mountains, and I saw you before that there's also a fault scarps and also linear phylae here. This might be formed due to the strike-slip faults of the west Poso faults that create this deep Poso lake. And as we know that Poso Lake is the third deepest lake in Indonesia. So the first one is the Matano Lake. So Matano just located in the further south. So it's related to the strike slip of Matano. So it's grouped as a tectonic lake. And then the second, we got Toba Lake. So the Matano is about, I don't know, about 500 more meters deep. And then it's only, the difference is only about 10 meters with the Toba Lake, but Toba Lake is the volcanic lake. It has a different story with the Matano and also here in the Poso Lake. So Poso Lake also grouped as the tectonic lake, and the depth is about 450 meters. And near here, so we've got Meko. As I mentioned before, there was the latest faults, and one of the latest earthquake happened in this area is Meko. And that's also one of the reasons why we did the Poso expeditions. And afterwards, after the the big earthquake, about 5.7 Scala Richter, we can see the changes, or there's also a landslide happen in this village. So I'm going to show you some drone that we took during the expedition. So we see now in the Meko River, and you can see there's a landslide here on the steep cliff next to the river. And it's really common in Sulawesi because there's a big topographic change between the mountains and the land area. So if there was an earthquake, or there might be a high rain happen, and if the landslide happen, and it can be block the river. And when it's blocked the river during the high intensity rain, it also can create like mudslides or mud flow, or torrent, or what we call as a banjir bandang towards the downstream area. So you can see this happened just after the earthquakes. And from the evidence, we can see that, maybe we can see again here from the Google Earth, that this lake is bounded by the mountains and also bounded by the faults. So maybe we can see this is the Poso Falls, and this is part of the Pompanggil, and this is the West Poso Falls. So you can see that Padang Marari that I saw you before, we got falls cup here. It's a part of the West Poso Falls, and you can see this is elongations here along relatively like if we move like from northwest southeast towards north south here, we can see that it's bounded by the faults. So we can so the Poso depressions and now become or Poso basin that was a sea before and now become a freshwater lake. It was formed by the tectonic activity. And this strike slip fault might be responsible to the formations of this Poso basin. So these two different parts are like, it's like slightly moving each other. So maybe there is some analogy or some cartoon that I can see here about the formations of the tectonic leg. So how this forms. So imagine that this is the West Poso Falls, and here we can get the Poso lake. So when the fault happens, so it means that the fault is also moving. So we got so you can see that the two faults. So let's say in here we got West Poso fault, and then we got the Poso faults in here. And then when they slightly moving each other, they create the depressions in between. And that's one of the reasons, and also why the lake itself can be very deep, like in Matano Fault. So that's can be one of the characteristic about the tectonic lake that is related to the strike slip. They usually very, very deep in terms of the depth. So you can see two blocks is moving each other, and then this create the depressions, and these depressions can create the the lake. And this might be one of the explanation why the Poso lake can be formed. So before that, actually, the Poso itself was a sea, and now it's become a freshwater lake, and it's also bounded by the slide slip faults. So that's a short explanations about how the formations of the Poso lakes from the sea and now become part of the lake on land. And after we spend most of the day in Tentena area, now we are going to move to Bada Valley. So we are going to see the megalithics evidence in the Bada Valley. It's part of the Lore Lindu National Park, and Eko will going to take us there. So this is Padang Marari. We are in the top of the Padang Marari. Sorry, I forgot that. Sorry, I forgot that. So there's also beach before we are going to see the megalithics. Now we are going to have a rest a bit in Suri Beach. So we do have a beach in this Poso Lake, and then interestingly, this beach just looks like in the beach from the sea. But we can say that if we see the sand or the sand beach itself, it's mainly composed of the rocks surrounding area. So we got I told you before, but we got metamorphic rocks. We got like kind of a schist, and also that marble, and then now they got weathered, and then out they got eroded to form this beach. So it's a good place to take a rest here. And if you want to swim without getting salty, so it's a nice place to come here. Okay, after we take rest in Siribis, and now we are going to megalithic sites. So maybe Eko can explain how we can get from Tentena to the Pokekea megalithic sites.
Oke, Bang Ega. Dari Poso kita menuju megalit Pokekea itu sekitar 3 sampai 4 jam ya, Bang Ega. Jalannya kurang baik ke sana, jadi harus hati-hati. Tapi ketika kita sampai di sana, kita akan rasa kurang nyaman selama di jalan itu akan terbayar ketika kita sampai di lokasi tersebut, karena memang kita akan melihat banyak megalit di situ dan sangat-sangat indah ya pemandangannya. Jadi situs Pokekea bukan hanya ada satu situs megalit di wilayah Lore, itu ada cukup banyak, dan usianya itu kalau saya sih nggak tahu, tapi mungkin Bang Ega lebih tahu. Tapi memang usianya cukup tua ya, Bang Ega.
Okay, so Eko said that we have to take a car, yeah, Eko? So we are going to pass Napu. So we are going to like ride along to, if I can show you here in this, sorry, I need to take this out. So, okay. Jadi yang tadi itu dia posisinya di sini ya, kok. Jadi kita itu dari Tentena itu naik jalan ini ya, ngelewatin pegunungan Tokorondo ya.
Iya, Bang Ega.
Ini kita bisa lihat betapa terjalnya jalannya ini, dan ini sering longsor. Jadi
Ya,
kita mesti hati-hati kalau musim hujan. Mungkin musim hujan nggak bisa lewat ya, jadi kita harus muter. Paling gampang sebenarnya lewat Palu ya, karena
iya.
jalannya relatif lebih datar. Kalau dari sini dia lebih terjal. Gitu. Jadi we need to take a car to through this road. It's a bumpy road, and it's sometimes during the rainy season there will be a landslide happen because it's a small road, like a shortcut to get into these megalithic sites. This megalithic sites is located in Badak Valley, and it's part of the Lore Lindu National Park. So it's interesting. So this not only found in here ya, Eko. Jadi ada di sini, kalau nggak salah di sini juga ada, termasuk di dekat Danau Lindu ya.
Iya ada.
Jadi dia di sekitar lembah-lembah di tinggian ini gitu. Nah, diperkirakan itu umurnya itu 1.500, lebih tua dari 1.500, jadi 1.700 sebelum Masehi. Gitu. Jadi diperkirakan situs ini bahkan lebih tua dibandingkan dengan terbentuknya piramid. Itu setahu saya. Jadi ini salah satu situs tertua, mungkin juga bukan hanya di Indonesia tapi di dunia gitu. Jadi menariknya lagi ini dia, kalau apa ya? Kalau saya jadi ingat Bandung gitu, karena dulu lama di Bandung ini. Jadi dia lembah tapi dia tetap di suatu tinggian gitu. Dan kalau kita lihat ke sini, di sini ada Danau Lindu, malah beneran kayak dan apa ya, Bandung purba gitu. Jadi kita punya danau di atas tinggian gitu. Jadi lembah tapi dia tetap di daerah tinggian gitu. Dan ini sangat menarik, situsnya juga sangat banyak gitu. Jadi dibilangnya mirip sama dengan yang di Christmas Island ya,
Iya.
batuan-batuannya itu kalau kita lihat di sini gitu. Dan mungkin masih banyak hal yang harus diteliti. Di sini ada kayak tempayan, itu nggak tahu, yang saya tahu ceritanya kalau masyarakat itu bilang tempat pemandian para ratu dan raja.
Suri iya.
Kemudian permaisuri gitu ada juga, tapi kalau menurut arkeolog itu malahan tempat ini kayak apa ya, sarkofagus gitu, kayak penyimpanan mayat gitu. Jadi tempat
Oh, iya.
mayat berada seperti itu. Jadi ini sangat-sangat menarik. Ini bahkan ada beberapa yang bentuknya itu ada yang dibilang kayak alien ya. Kalau ini katanya batu nggak tahu, anak dan orang tua, ibu dan anak. Cuma sejarah arkeologinya saya juga kurang tahu. Tapi ini salah satu tempat wajib atau tempat yang sangat terkenal lah. Jadi banyak turis yang pasti datang. Nah ini yang tadi apa sih namanya kok? Ini tempayan-tempayan ini kok?
Aduh, saya lupa Bang Ega.
Iya, ada istilahnya gitu. Jadi ada tempat, ada yang besar, ada yang kecil gitu. Katanya itu menunjukkan status-status yang berbeda gitu. Jadi dulu mungkin yang saya tahu peradabannya ini termasuk 1.700 sebelum Masehi, ini termasuk yang maju di sini gitu. Bahkan mungkin diperkirakan jumlah penduduknya lebih banyak dibandingkan jumlah penduduk yang ada sekarang. Ini juga jadi sangat menarik untuk diteliti bagi yang tertarik di bidang arkeologi. Seperti itu. Bahkan masih ada satu pertanyaan besar yang belum diketahui, ini teknologi apa yang mereka gunakan gitu untuk memahat batu ini gitu. Jadi diperkirakan pakai batu juga. Kalau saya bilang ini batunya harus lebih keras ya, kalau di dalam geologi kan ada kerasan batuan tuh, mungkin harus pakai intan. Tapi sampai sekarang belum ditemukan tuh alatnya tuh seperti apa. Bahkan bisa bikin tuh sangat detail, sangat simetris, itu masih jadi pertanyaan teknologi apa yang bisa bikin ini balik ke pada saat zaman yang bisa dibilang mungkin di tempat lain itu masih ketinggalan gitu. Sedangkan di sini bisa dikatakan pada saat 1.700 sebelum Masehi, di sini udah termasuk yang yang sangat sangat maju gitu. So it's a really interesting megalithic sites. In here we can see different sides, and then the different shapes of the statue is just like in the Christmas Island. So we also get like a small the big place, like a big circle place that is believed as a place where you can place the dead body by the archaeologists, but the local people believes that is a place to put the water where the king and then the famous people can have a bath in here. And there's also still a mystery in here because archaeologists cannot find the tools which they can make these sites. So it's still a big question how back into like about 1,700 I think it's before Christ. How they can make this. Jadi setelah kita jalan-jalan ke sini, mungkin kita karena di sini penginapan termasuk jarang ya, jarang yang mungkin kualitasnya yang baik. Jadi biasanya mungkin kita balik lagi atau kalau mau camping juga bisa. Ini kalau malam-malam juga keren kelihatan bintangnya. Jadi sekarang kita akan kembali lagi ke Tentena ya. Kita kembali ke Dodoha Musin Tuwu. Mungkin kita akan diskusi di sini. Ada beberapa participants yang mungkin bisa menanyakan atau memberitahu informasi lebih lanjut dari apa yang telah kita sampaikan. Jadi kita bisa menginap di sini di Dodoha Musin Tuwu. Ini tempatnya juga sangat ramah lingkungan. Ini terbuatnya semuanya dari bambu. Di sini juga ada penginapan. Di sini kita bisa banyak makan, gitu. Jadi makanan lokal termasuk tadi sidat itu juga dimasak di sini ya kok. Jadi
Iya, benar.
disajikan juga di sini, dijual di sini. Jadi kita bisa nikmati. Ini di depannya ini udah Danau Poso ini. Jadi ini udah di pinggir Danau Poso gitu. Ini coba kita lihat apalagi ya yang kita bisa diskusikan. Jadi oke, oh ada tambahan informasi yang lupa saya sampaikan ini. Nah, jadi ini yang pertama kali mengenalkan ke dunia situs ini, mungkin masyarakat sekitar udah tahu, tapi yang mengenalkan ini ke dunia itu karena ditemukan oleh Creed dan Adriani ya. Jadi Creed ini setahu saya dia misionaris ya Eko.
Iya, benar Bang Ega.
Tahun 18 masuk ke Poso, bangun sekolah juga, membangun pendidikan masyarakat, dan ini Adriani juga selanjutnya datang, ini sebagai ahli bahasa, ahli linguistik, dua-duanya dari Belanda, kemudian banyak melakukan ekspedisi, termasuk mereka ke ini ya, ke situs megalit ini, kemudian dia menulis tentang situs megalit ini. Jadi ini salah satu publikasi awal tentang situs megalit yang ada di Sulawesi ini. Oke, sekarang kita coba balik ke Dodoha Musin Tuwu. Oke, ini foto di hutan pinus. Ini juga salah satu tempat wisata yang bisa kita kunjungi. Ini kalau dari Tentena berapa lama kok hutan pinus?
Ke arah Panjoka sekitar 2 atau 3 jam ya Bang Ega.
Panjoka ya, sekitar 2 atau 3 jam. Ini tempat Instagramable. Ini dulu tim Ekspedisi Poso, saya juga mengucapkan terima kasih banyak untuk tim Ekspedisi Poso. Saya bisa bersempatan jalan-jalan, meneliti lebih lanjut tentang keanekaragaman geologi, hayati, sosial, dan budaya di Sulawesi. Oke.